Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing both our coverage of the war that is taking place between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, at the same time, we are also going to cover some recent events that are taking place many thousands of miles away from the front lines of the Ukraine. Now, within the last several days, the island nation of Taiwan has received its first batch of M1A2T Tango main battle tanks from the United States. Now, this deal, this arms purchase by the Republic of China, by Taiwan, occurred back in 2019. It occurred back in the first Trump administration. It has taken in excess of 5 years for these main battle tanks to be produced and then sent to Taiwan. Now, knowing what we know now, if we watch what is happening on the battlefield of the Ukraine, back in 2019, would it have been a wise purchase for Taiwan to order these M1A2 main battle tanks? Now look, necessity is the mother of invention. And the battlescape around the world looked quite a bit different in 2019 than it does today. And what I'm talking about is drones. The capability in which you have a very low cost, hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars, quadcopter carrying a small, very small shaped charge that then has the ability to hit the weak part of a main battle tank or even the top of the turret, penetrating the turret, possibly injuring or killing the crew, or just an easier engagement in which you do a mobility kill on that tank, maybe set it afire. Again, low-cost quadcopter drone with a shaped charge. The armor on the back deck of these M1A2s is not that thick. Not that thick at all. A 25 millimeter chain gun round from a Bradley will penetrate this back deck of the Abrams. Now, if you have a drone carrying an RPG-7 type shaped charge, it's definitely going to mobility kill this tank, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So back in 2019, we were not seeing the type of war that we're seeing right now. But nonetheless, over the course of 5 years, Taiwan finally received its M1A2 main battle tanks, Ts. Why do they call it a T? M1A2T Tango? Well, unfortunately for these main battle tanks, they do not have the DU or depleted uranium in the turret. That gives it that enhanced protection you would see on an American M1A2 or an M1A1 heavy common. Had the opportunity to operate both a M1A1 and just prior to the Gulf War on that M1A1 standard, they applied a sheet of tungsten steel to give us additional armored protection. And then after the war, we received M1A1 heavy commons, which had the depleted uranium in the turret. The tanks that were operated in the Gulf War for some American units or many American units, in fact, didn't have DU in the turret. They were standard M1A1s. Now the Taiwanese will have the A2. It will give them a the advantage of the commander's independent site that is here. So you have your gunner's primary site, which the tank commander can also observe as well, and then the quote unquote hunter killer system. So the tank commander can be looking for targets. When the gunner engages a target with his optic, they can then slew the turret to the corresponding target that the TC or the tank commander is also attempting to engage as well. It's the hunter killer concept. Now, again, is this going to give Taiwan an additional capability? Is it going to give it an enhanced capability that would change the outcome of any engagement between Taiwan and China? And again, what we're looking at, the whole concept of these M1A2s is that we are looking at an actual Chinese People's Liberation Army landing on Taiwan proper. Now, I would argue that Taiwan already has essentially the same capability. The same capability that the M1A2 would give Taiwan. Taiwan has that capability in the M60A3. Does the M60A3 have the hunter-killer system? No, it doesn't. Does it have much less armor, quality of armor? Yes, absolutely. Does it have a smaller main gun? It does. 105 millimeter cannon versus the 120 smoothbore. But these M60A3s do have a very high quality thermal imaging sight. I would argue in some cases, based on my experience, the optic in the M60A3 is better than the optic in the old M1A1 standard, or even the M1A1HC. Not sure what the thermal imaging sight in terms of quality looks like in the M1A2. I've never had the opportunity to look through that optic, but I don't imagine it's a significant difference. Compounding that, if and when the Chinese land or attempt to conduct amphibious operations against Taiwan, by and large, they're going to be using amphibious assault type vehicles. They're not going to be initially landing Type 96 or Type 92 A's, heavy main battle tanks, to operate against Taiwan. China will be using very lightly armed vehicles, and what they will be using against the Republic of China, or the Taiwanese main battle tanks, is anti-tank guided weapon systems, drones, aircraft, but they, in all probability, won't need to use or engage these heavy main battle tanks with their own main battle tanks to achieve mission success. So why is Taiwan purchasing M1A2Ts that will give themselves a very, very limited capability than what they already have? Well, the answer to that is big budget defense spending. The United States has to keep these tank plants operating, and the only way you'd keep a tank plant operating with employees who know how to build these tanks is to actually build or refurbish main battle tanks. I would argue that in 2019, within a year, they could have sent refurbished older American M1A1s and essentially given Taiwan the same capability in terms of improved armor protection. Now, that would have worked great in the 1990s, the 1980s, if China was preparing an invasion then. It would have helped Taiwan. But fast forward into 2025, going into 2030, China has the capability to very easily mission kill these tanks. Now, they would do that under really one condition. And that one condition is if they gain air supremacy over Taiwan. If China is able to gain air supremacy over Taiwan, that means defeat its air defense capacity, then a victory for the Chinese is definitely going to be more optimistic. Not saying it's going to happen. It's still going to be a very difficult amphibious operation that China would have to undertake to subjugate the island. But first and foremost, before purchasing large numbers of new main battle tanks, when war is changing and war is evolving, especially with drones, then I think Taiwan really should have rethought that process, rethought its strategy. Again, the number one objective for Taiwan in any engagement against China is, number one, maintaining air defense over the island, making it difficult for China's Air Force and swarms of drones to operate against targets on the island, have the ability to interdict ballistic missiles. And then two, if that cannot be achieved, have the ability to engage Chinese amphibious surface ships as they approach Taiwan. It looks like the Taiwanese, the Republic of China, has decided to look more towards an actual engagement of Chinese forces in terms of tanks and infantry, marines, as they attempt to land on the island. But if you get to that point for Taiwan, the outlook of victory is going to decrease. I'm not saying it's impossible at that point where Chinese vehicles are starting to land on the island. There's 3 stages to this conflict, and the Chinese have to win each stage. The first stage is going to be to achieve air supremacy. The second stage is going to be able to have its navy operate in the waters near Taiwan. And that's going to be difficult. And then finally, the third stage is going to be the actual landing operation. In each of those stages, China has to be victorious. If China doesn't have air supremacy over Taiwan and the Taiwanese Air Force is still operating, they still have the ability to engage Chinese aircraft, drones, and launch their own drones and their own aircraft against Chinese surface vessels, it's going to be difficult for China. So again, it would have probably been wise for Taiwan to invest its money, to invest technology, its manpower, its training into systems that are going to achieve a victory in Stage 1 and Stage 2. Stage 1, again, air supremacy. Stage 2, sea denial. You can engage Chinese infantry and armored vehicles and amphibious assault vehicles that are coming ashore with different platforms that would have achieved or would achieve the same results as an M1A2. Not only that, you risk a greater chance of what I call a self-induced mobility kill with an M1A2 than you would with, say, a Hummer armed with an anti-tank guided weapon system. Those are far more maneuverable and have the ability, in terms of lethality, with long-range anti-tank guided weapon systems, to do the same type of damage as a main battle tank. And you have a much less of a probability of what I call, again, that self-induced mobility kill, which means that an inexperienced crew operating an M1A2 in a combat situation is going to be far likely to run off an overpass or end up in a paddy field, end up in a ditch or a river that would mobility kill that M1 Abrams, because then you would need recovery vehicles, you would need personnel to then come out, get to that tank, that self-induced mobility kill, and then get it out of its predicament. Wouldn't really need to do that or expend that much effort with a smaller vehicle. Again, that in terms of lethality would give you the same capability. Look, Taiwan has essentially a Hummer with a 20 millimeter chain gun on it, operating with another vehicle that has a TOW anti-tank guided weapon system. Those two vehicles would essentially give you the same capability and probably exceed capability in terms of the 20 millimeter cannon, just wouldn't give you the armored protection. Now, that could be an issue, obviously, if the environment becomes saturated with artillery raining down on a certain area. But again, even then, heavy tanks are susceptible to heavy artillery fire. Mission kill, optics, power plant, power pack, what have you. So again, they waited 5 years for this system. Not that system, this system, when they had these systems already. Again, essentially the same capability. These M60A3s would be engaging lighter armed amphibious vehicles. But again, Taiwan doesn't even want to get to this point where they're having to engage Chinese tanks or light tanks swimming ashore. Taiwan wants to stop China from even getting to that point. They want to deny China operational capability in terms of both at sea and in the air over Taiwan. And that's where the money should have been spent. Not buying these high-end these M1A2Ts. If they had to go this route and they wanted to, they could have simply purchased Bradleys. Bradleys would have given them an additional capability with the 25 millimeter chain gun to rapidly engage incoming amphibious vehicles, but also the TOW anti-tank system on it as well. And I can tell you the likelihood, knowing Taiwan's strategy in terms of how they employ their main battle tanks, they will not be using these M1A2s in a mobile capacity. HIMARS. It would have been far more effective for Taiwan to purchase HIMARS or other multiple launch rocket systems, precision-guided multiple launch rocket systems. As China attempts to land, they can then shell those beaches with these high precision HIMARS rather than engaging with main battle tanks. Probably far more effective. 18 HIMARS operating in various locations across Taiwan would probably be more effective, far more effective than 120 M1A2s. Much more easier for China to find those Abrams main battle tanks and engage them with drones versus a HIMARS hidden in a valley deep inside of Taiwan that is given coordinates for a strike or is relayed satellite information by the United States to then engage those Chinese targets, just like they're doing now in the Ukraine. But again, as a former armored crew member in the U.S. military, I'm not so certain this was a wise choice. The money could have been spent on systems and capability that would prove far more valuable than what was spent on these M1A2s. So I wanted to discuss that. I wanted to talk about that very briefly. Thank you for joining us. As always, have a good day.